All right, and we're going to be doing something I never really thought I've done before. We're going to be doing a Magic the Gathering Arena deck profile on Krenko Mob Bros for the Brawl format, not the 60 card variant that has like the rotating card slot, but the 100 card. I think it's called like Standard Brawl or something. Either way, it's basically Commander with a much more limited card pool, unfortunately, but it's still a lot of fun. So we're just going to be going over the deck, basically what it does, because it is a little bit different compared to my IRL Magic the Gathering Commander deck profile for Krenko because of the limitations that Arena sets forth. Either way though, let's just jump into the deck here. Krenko Mob Boss, CMC 4/3/3, you have to tap him and create a number of goblin tokens equal to the number of goblins you control. The deck is kind of revolved around this little guy. That's basically all we want to do is just summon as many goblins as possible with haste and smack face. Because we do have a lot of cards that augment our goblin tokens for higher power and toughness. So again, name of the game, Krenko as soon as we can, spam the board and then just do damage. In some of the matches we've actually encountered, we were playing against Slivers that actually had like a negative 238 after combat step. So it's kind of nutty how fast Krenko can get. We also have one copy of Foundry Street Denizen. This is actually really good with Krenko on the board because he can get really strong really quickly if you just, tap Krenko, make more gobos. Goblin Arsonist, when it dies, it could ping something for one. It's a cheap goblin. As you can tell, like our mana curve in this deck is extremely low. Like the majority of our stuff is like 2. Because we want to get as many goblins as we can to be able to tap Krenko as fast as possible. Goblin Javanir, it has haste, which is still pretty good. And when it becomes block, it deals 1 damage to target creature blocking it. Again, just the cheap cost is what we're looking at. Goblin Motivator can be another way to give Krenko haste if we really need to. But again, cheap goblin. Raging Goblin, 1/1 with haste. Skirt Prospector, one of the best cards in the deck by far, because this with Krenko is just going to be so much mana for days. And it's really cool that it adds a mountain mana instead of like a colorless, because it just gives you more utility. Playing one copy of Street Cadet, when it becomes blocky, they create another goblin token. Hooray! We're also playing a Torch Carrier, again, haste, 1/1. But again, you get to sacrifice him, give another creature haste until the end of the turn, aka your Krenko. So again, we're just trying to get Krenko haste as fast as possible. We're playing one Wayfarer's Bauble. Honestly, it's not bad. If we can't really do anything else, just a way that we can pseudo ramp in the game. So not bad. We have a Rod. It's a CMC 2. You can either deal 3 damage to something or destroy an artifact. Again, honestly, just removal is something we don't have a whole lot of. So, also doing some damage is pretty nice too. Considering this is also, instead of 40 life, we're playing with 25. Battlecry Goblin. Actually, this dude is actually pretty good. So whenever, Battlecry Goblin attacks, if you have a creatures with a total power of 6 or more, you get to create more tokens, and that's tapped and attacking. But you can also pay a colorless and a red and give all your goblins +1/0 and haste. This actually came in really clutch, where I was actually using this along with Skirk to really boost up our goblins to like 5/1 and had like 30, and I was able to like just go through and sweep for clean win. One Conspicuous Snoop. It's a 2 CMC with 2/2. You get to cast goblins from the top of your library and has all the activated abilities of that card. So it's just a great way for us to be able to get more goblins. It's kind of like drawing in a sense because we have so many goblins. Crystal Slipper. It's a cheap equipment that gives Krenko haste +1/0. Again, haste is the name of the game. I'm not really too fond of this card, but again, this is just the first iteration of the deck. There's going to be a lot of edits here, actually. We have Curse of the Shaken Faith. This is actually kind of good too, because you get to enchant the player, and whenever they start, like getting to the mid to late game where they start playing multiple spells in a turn, they're going to be taking 2 damage, which is pretty nice, honestly, because it really does add up and makes them want to hold off on trying to play multiple cards. One copy of Demand Answers. Again, just draw. We're trying to get our haste enablers and our ramp and I guess mountains and stuff like that, and just our really good goblins too. So Demand Answer just gives you a way to go through your deck quicker. And honestly, discarding a card or sacrificing an artifact is not bad. Again, you can usually ditch a cheap goblin you don't need. You can sacrifice a treasure token. You can do a lot of things. Goblin Bombardment, it's just another alternate win condition if we can't kill our opponents during the battle phase. We could just use this as a sack outlet and just keep pinging for the opponent or monsters. Goblin Instigator, pretty good card just because it is a CMC 2 at a 1/1, and then he gets to drop another goblin on the creature. So again, just having more goblins is pretty good. Goblin Morale Sergeant. It's got haste. He also has enlist, be able to conjure duplicate copy of that creature into the top 5 cards of your library at random. And again, +1/0 and haste, so really, really good. Again, just more cheap gobos. Gorogoro, Disciple of Ryusei. You get to pay into a red to be able to give all your creatures haste, but it's also it's also a CMC of 2. We haven't come across one of my favorite cards in the deck, but we'll be there shortly. We have Grab the Prize. Again, just more discard and draw, honestly, because I want to draw and get my answers quickly. Impact Tremor is one of the best cards in the deck, honestly, in my opinion, because as you start getting more goblins on the field, just spamming them, like if you get Krenko to, like, you know, just kick out like 12 goblins, you're doing 12 to your opponent even before the combat phase starts. So it really starts doing some good damage. Krenko's command, you pay 2, you get 2 goblins out of it. What's not to love? Rudevelt Horde Master. Other goblins get +1/+1. And then whenever he or another goblin dies, you can exile the top card of your library. If it's a goblin creature, you can cast it until the end of your next turn. So it's really good in the fact that it strengthens your goblins as well, but it also does allow you to just potentially play more cards off the top of your library, because if they die in combat, you can just go from there. Or even better yet, if you're like sacrificing them off of Skirk Prospector, it becomes kind of like drawing a card in a sense. Speaking of drawing, Tormenting Voice, discard a card, draw 2. Willy Goblin, when he enters a battlefield, you get his token of a treasure, which you can then sacrifice for adding more color. So again, just having tokens just be able to use for later is really nice as well. Kind of like investing into mana you can use later on. We're also playing 1 Arcane Signet because unfortunately there is no Soul Ring. But still pretty good. 2 CMC, tap 1 for a red, basically, pretty decent. 1 Cold Steel Heart. It's a little bit slow, but it is another form of ramp we can use. Mind Stone, you get to pay 2, you get to tap it for a colorless, or you can even pay 1 and sack it to draw a card. So it kind of gives you a little bit both of ramp and drawing, depending on what you really need. Once you have like 5 or 6 mountains usually on the board, that's when you can kind of go for victory. Ruby Medallion, red spells you cost 1 less, which is really good. Again, all of our goblins become so much more cheaper. The majority of our goblins here are like, a red and a colorless, or even just 1 red. So just having such cheap reduction for our creatures is fantastic. 1 Swiftfoot Boots, again, giving Krenko, haste, and even hexproof is really good, because now there's going to be a fast creature. He's also going to be a protected one too. Throne of the God Pharaoh, honestly, in like IRL Magic the Gathering Commander, this is pseudo of a win con, because after you're doing your combat, if you have a ton of like tapped goblins during your end step, like you're just going to be draining your opponent so much life. And the fact that it only costs 2 is insane, honestly. This thing is such a good card. Devilish Valet. Whenever another creature enters your control, you get the double his power until the end of the turn. Which is kind of dumb if you think about it, because we could drop like 20 goblins like it's nothing. We have Gem Pal and Incinerator. He has cycling, which is kind of cool too. And he also does give you the ability of like doing, in a sense, targeted removal. Because if you have a lot of creatures on the board, you can pay 2 to cycle him and then just deal X damage to a target creature equal to the number of goblins on your board, which is pretty easy to get high amounts. Goblin Chieftain, it gives all your other goblins +1/+1 in haste. So again, just fantastic card. Not only does it give them haste, but strengthen them as well. Goblin Matron. When you drop Matron, you get to search your library for a goblin and then reveal that and put it into the top of your hand. Unfortunately, like in the paper TCG, there's a better combo you can do with like Goblin Recruiter and this card, and then just work into one of our other bigger creatures, but Matron is still pretty solid in this format. War Chief, this is like one of my favorite creatures in the deck by far, because he gives all your goblins haste, but even just cost reduction. And that's really good. So if we can't get our form of reduction in artifacts, Goblin War Chief is probably one of the best things we can do. Hobgoblin Bandit Lord, again, gives all your other goblins more +1/+1. And of course, you get to pay red and then tap it, and deals damage equal to the number of goblins after the battlefield to any target. So you can basically tap Krenko, have a bunch of creatures drop on the board, and then you can just pay another 1, tap him, and then you can be able to do 20, 30, you can do a ton of damage to somebody with this guy. And it can even be your opponent, so it can be player removal, or you can just get rid of like a problematic threat, or just like put in a weird position. Hordeling Outburst, you pay 3, you get 3 goblins out of it, but if you have Ruby Medallion, it only becomes 2, so pretty good investment on that one. Krenko 10 Street Kingpin, really good dude. What's really cool about him is whenever he attacks, you put a counter on him, then you create 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to its power. It's not how many counters he has, but it's power. So if you already have like your chieftain and all of your other augmenters that just make your goblins stronger by default, you're going to get a lot more value out of him. Legion Warboss just creates more goblins. He's pretty cheap on its own, but again, just being able to have the ability of creating more goblins and then attacking with haste, it's pretty nice. Pashlik Mons, whenever a goblin or him dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So it's kind of like goblin bombardment in a sense on a body, but he can also even create more goblins and sacrificing them too. So you can even pay 4 to deal 1 and then create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. Pretty sick, pretty sick. We have Rising the Day, just kind of a way to be able to give our creatures more haste. And even having the legendary creatures you can go get a +1/0 is kind of nice too, just because giving Krenko a little bit more strength is not too shabby. And of course, like, the Street Pin and all the other ones. 1 copy of Ashnod's Altar. Again, sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless. Really good, considering the fact that now we have ways of getting, either colorless mana or, red mana. It just works really well. Burnished Heart. Honestly, this hasn't ever really come up. And this might be a card that we do take out. Like, it's a good card, but, we have other ways of kind of like accelerating into our mana and also just like, using our mana for other things too. But Burnished Heart's fine. Cloud Key, as it enters the battlefield, you can choose a creature, artifact, enchantment, and sorcery. Spells you cast of the chosen type become 1 less. Again, just more mana reduction. You can always go for like, creatures and just be able to have all your goblins much cheaper. But it really depends on what you already have on the board. Because again, you can choose sorceries or instants and be able to get much cheaper draw or, disruption. Hazardous Monument makes all your red creature spells 1 less to cast. And then if you cast a creature spell, you can discard a card. And if you do draw, kind of helps fix your hands. If you have nothing going on your hands, like just constant lands or just high CMC creatures you can't summon for a few turns, you could pitch them off and then grab something like a mana land or something that just works in your current situation. Herald's Horn, fantastic. Makes goblins 1 less to cast. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature, you get to reveal it and then put it in your hand. So you're kind of like drawing an extra card, but also having the mana reduction. Staff of Domination is fantastic. I actually got to use this against, I think it was the Elish Nor player, where we were just able to make a bunch of Krenkos enter or goblins enter the field because we tapped for Krenko, got our creatures, and then we, paid the 3 after like using Mind Stone and a Skirk to untap Krenko and then tapping this and then tapping Krenko again, effectively doubling our monsters. It was fantastic. Worn Power Stone, it does enter tap, which kind of sucks, but the fact that it does tap for 2 is really good because if you can get this thing onto the board pretty quickly and, it just pays half of Krenko's first cost right then and there. Beetleback Chief, when he enters, he creates 2 goblins, so paying 4 to get 3 goblins, with one of them being a 2/2, is pretty good investment in my opinion. Goblin Gang Leader, kind of like the same mentality as Beetleback Chief, actually. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. Just be able to get more goblins on the board. Ringleader is fantastic. You can actually set this up really well with Matron, where you play the Matron and then you can either summon, Ringleader by searching it or one of the other cards, Muxus, and then just being able to potentially either get more goblins into your hand or even dropping them onto the field if you're playing Muxus. It just depends, but Ringleader is great. Trashmaster also increases your goblins by +1/+1. You can sack a goblin and destroy a target artifact. Storm's Wrath. We don't have a whole lot of board wipes currently in my collection, but this actually works pretty well. Like, you pay 4 and you get to deal 4 damage to each creature in Planeswalker. A lot of the games that you do early on when this actually becomes live, it can be a pseudo board wipe and it allows you just like hold off and then play your creatures and Krenko when it really matters. Helm of the Host. If one Krenko isn't good enough, we can make a double one. And more. At the beginning of your combat and your turn, create a token that's a copy of the equipped creature, except that token isn't legendary and it gains haste. Helm of the Host is just a fantastic card that just makes this deck go nuts. Barrage Taunter, it is indestructible. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to the target opponent. And you can also pay 3 and tap it to make him fight something. Being indestructible really comes in clutch when he's taking a ton of damage. Siege Gang Commander, pay 5, you get to drop this and 3 1/1s. And you can also pay 2, sack a goblin, and deal 2 damage. Like, he's just flinging creatures. Well, doing 2, but he's still doing fine. Vanquisher's Banner, call goblins, they all get +1/+1. Plus, whenever you play a creature of the chosen type, you get to draw a card. So not only does it make your board even bigger and scarier, but it allows you to kind of, reap the value by playing other goblins. Morag, Fury of the Comb. Again, each creature you control gets a +1/0 for each time it is attacked this turn. And of course, it actually has like the only landfall trigger where when a land enters the battlefield, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase at the beginning of that combat, and you untap all your creatures. What's like really cool is that you can, retap Krenko again. And then get more goblins. And if you have one of your creatures that give them haste, hooray, you're going to be doing a lot of things. It's great. I love it. And then we also have Muxus of the Goblin Grady. Again, it's kind of like the better version of Ringleader, because when he drops, you reveal the top 6 cards, but all goblins at CMC 5 of less onto the battlefield. And then whenever he attacks, he gets +1/1 until the end of your turn for each other goblin you control. In one of my matches against, I think it was a mirror match. No. I think it was against Slivers. I was actually able to get this guy up to like 54-54. It was great. It was great. We're playing for the land base. We're playing 37 mountains, 1 Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. Again, having a high devotion is pretty easy. So I kind of figured this would be either at worst it taps for colorless. At best, it can, you pay 2, you might get 6 or 7 out of it. Unfortunately, tokens don't really count to devotion, but still, you can have a lot of other goblins on the field and just do, quite a bit of things. And Reliquary Tower. It doesn't really come up too often where we have more than 7 cards in our hand. However, I just liked having the possible option of having infinite cards in our hands. It just kind of seems nice. But yeah, that's Krenko Mob Boss version 1 for Magic the Gathering Arena. I'm actually having a lot of fun with this, and I'm going to continue to keep playing it. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What you like about the deck, what you don't like about the deck. Any suggestions on some of the cards? Because there's a few cards I'm, not really too sold on. But yeah, that's going to be it for me, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, until next time.